rather than later to make sure that your driveway is clear after we get the blizzard of 2010 here in the Midlands. 978-1832 is the phone number, 9781-TEAM Sports Talk at 1400theteam.com. Joining us now on the hotline from SECsportsReport.com, Jay Holgate. How much snow do you have there in Atlanta, Jay?
Man, Kevin, it's like a flurry down here. It's crazy.
It's nuts.
It's nuts.
It's a gridlock, I'm sure.
No, it's on the roof line, so I guess it's been snowing for about an hour, and it just kind of comes in little flurries. I don't know that anything's sticking on the ground yet, but temperature's going to be dropping here, and they say a half an inch of snow's coming in, so something to look forward to.
I'll believe it when I see it, but we will see. We'll see. All right. Well, Jay, you have been covering the SEC for us all season long, sharing your thoughts. Let's get your take on a couple of things, including we'll get to tonight's national championship featuring Alabama and Texas. I know you were at the Chick-fil-A Bowl, watched Virginia Tech and Tennessee. What were your thoughts on that debacle for the Vols?
I think, long story short, I think that Tennessee got in trouble pretty early on with depth issues. They've kind of had some of those issues all year long. They got 22 pretty good players, but after that, there's a pretty serious drop in their talent level. Rico McCoy went down at some point during the game. I saw a freshman out there playing middle linebacker. That's never a real good sign. I didn't recognize his name. That's also a bad sign. I just know that they just got, they were running those little counter plays, Virginia Tech was, and Tennessee, they got one man to make the play, and he wasn't making it, and he was still figuring out the playbook. So, I think that Tennessee just, they got behind with the depth pretty early on, and there's not much you can do about that. I felt like that they called a pretty good game. Kiffin, after the game, was really angry. It was, I think it was typical Kiffin. He is a perfectionist kind of coach. He expects his players to go out there regardless of who's playing. He expects them to perform at a high level. I thought they played as well as they could have, but I just think that it was Virginia Tech's night. And once that touchdown pass that was thrown over the middle, Jonathan Crumpton had a chance to put that game, make it close. He threw a perfect pass. I think it was Moore that dropped it. But if he makes that catch, we might be talking about a victorious Tennessee team right now. So I really thought that Tennessee had some opportunities in that game. That pass was 55 yards down the middle. The guy was wide open. It hit him in the hands. You couldn't have thrown it any better, and he just dropped it. So, it's kind of like the South Carolina game. Guste makes that catch, and they're down 6 points, and it's a whole different game, a different result at the end of the game. So that's football.
And you can usually bring it down to a play or two. Wanted to ask you if you noticed anything after the game. There's been some talk that there was a chilly moment between Lane Kiffin and Frank Beamer as far as the handshake goes. Was there any talk about that, or was that just something that looked worse on TV than maybe it was in actuality?
I did not see that. I've probably read the same stories that you have about it. I know that I don't know how closely you followed the game, but at halftime, Tennessee tried to sneak out of there, when the ball was down on like the 3-yard line after a busted play on Tennessee's defensive guys' part. They tried to shoot it into the locker room, and Beamer ran out on the field, and they basically made the whole Tennessee team come out of the locker room, and they went out there, and Virginia Tech kicked a field goal. And so it's kind of humiliating for Tennessee on a certain level. Lane Kiffin blew by Holly Rowe with ESPN. I did see that, and he was like, we're getting out of here. We're not going to give him a chance to score. But the referees called him back out there. The whole team had to come out. And it was kind of, it was just interesting. It's just part of the drama of SEC football. I don't really know. I know that Kiffin, I've been watching him all season long. I've seen every Tennessee game. He has a tendency to blow by reporters when they're not doing well. He doesn't want to talk about things when things aren't going well. And I think he took that field goal at the end as a pretty tough break. I did hear later that he apologized to Holly Rowe for not doing the interview. it's part of the protocol. If you're an SEC coach, you got to give that halftime interview before you go in the locker room. But I just think the guy, he's a fairly emotional guy. He gets into the game. He doesn't want to be involved with anything that distracts him from it. Part of that is that he hates losing, like we all do. And I don't know that the whole thing, he was pretty upset at the end of the game. I wouldn't doubt it if he sidestepped Beamer. I just think that he was just ready to get off the field. It was a long night for him. Virginia Tech kept scoring points when I think that most people would have thought that they wouldn't have scored that final touchdown. They actually finished the game on the 5-yard line, so they could have scored one more time if Beamer had wanted to. But I don't think Kiffin wanted to see that happen.
Yeah, well, ESPN, they pay a lot of money to get those halftime interviews
Yeah.
to the SEC. All right, you were also at the PapaJohns.com Bowl. That one didn't go too well for Steve Spurrier. All that momentum they had and were riding after the big Clemson win, it was like somebody let the air out of the balloon against UConn.
Man, K-Mac, I was down on the field before the game, and I actually stayed on the field for the entire game. And I always watch for these teams, in the pregame warm-up, I usually can get a pretty good feel for how the game's going to play. My basic rule is the team that's the most intense for the pregame usually wins the game. When I was watching South Carolina, they were just kind of running through the drills. They were looking at each other. It wasn't real intense. It was fairly flat. I asked a couple of the grad assistants on the sidelines. I was like, hey, did you guys have good practices this week? And they assured me that they were very good practices, and I just couldn't see it because it didn't look like they were playing with a whole lot of enthusiasm. It was cold, and a lot of those players were in short-sleeve shirts. And I had 4 layers on me with a heavy coat and a hat on. I was freezing down there. I think it was 15 or 18 degrees down there on the field. So I would not have been wanting to play that game in a short-sleeve shirt, which is what I saw most of the South Carolina players doing. Now, that being said, for the entire game, it just seemed like for South Carolina, it just seemed like they were just couldn't get into the game. They couldn't get the big break. They couldn't get every time it looked like they had something going, there would be a penalty. The players were not talking to each other. I did not see any kind of offensive coordinator talking to the offensive line. And when I was down in Columbia earlier in the season, I saw Wolford all over those players every single time they came off the field. Now, I did not see one coach talking to those players. They were on the sidelines.
They didn't have an offensive line coach. Kornblut said he was paying attention. The Gamecock Radio Network sideline reporter Terry Cousin was talking to him and coaching him up at one point. I think one of the red-shirted offensive linemen was drawing up plays on the grease board. It was a debacle up front there. And give Randy Edsel and UConn a lot of credit. They had a great game plan. They confused an easily confused offensive line, and they won the game. Moving on, before we let you go, we got to get your take here on this BCS National Championship out in Pasadena. Alabama, Nick Saban, back in the title game, taking on Mack Brown in Texas. How do you see this one shaking out?
Man, K-Mac, I hate to break it to you, but this is going to be all Alabama tonight. It's going to be a repeat of the SEC Championship. We're probably looking at the same score. It's going to be Alabama 34, Texas 13. You can just go ahead and put it down. If you guys want to, if you just want to TiVo the game, you can catch it tomorrow. But Alabama's going to win.
There's a snowstorm coming. I'll just play out in the snow then. Mike?
This is the deal. Nick Saban's been feeding those guys raw meat all week long. You saw that McLean was out with a virus. I think that's because he's been eating raw meat. My understanding is that after the game's over, if Alabama wins, all the players get on a plane and fly back. If they lose, the players are on their own, figuring out a way to get back from Pasadena. I'm telling you, Alabama's going to win this game, and that's just going to be the way it is.
You think he's held their per diem money until tonight?
Absolutely. No gifts. Those kids hadn't seen TV. They won't let them talk to reporters. It's just it's Nick Saban football. It's what we love about football. It's why they win. And so, Alabama's going to win that game big tonight. If you look at what Colt McCoy's been saying, there's just a touch of fear in what he's saying. He talks about the defense, how they're always changing things. Just enough fear. Whenever fear enters an equation, the other team wins. And I'm just telling you, Alabama's going to win this game big tonight.
The Orlando Sentinel put out today, it said a victory for Texas tonight, and good guy coach Mack Brown is a victory for kindness graciousness, and warmth.
That's right.
A victory for Alabama and evil genius coach Nick Saban will make college football a colder, meaner, less likable place than it already is.
Oh,
And
that's
I'm so
terrible.
mad about him.